On a river that once swallowed empires, the drums begin to thunder. The Red River of Vietnam glows like molten iron beneath a storm-dark sky. Lightning splits the horizon, revealing fleets of wooden warships slicing through the current. Banners snapping in the wind, black ink screaming two ancient words, Satat, strike the Mongols. The sound rises, oars slamming, gongs echoing, men shouting into the rain. On every deck stand warriors in tattered armor, farmers turn soldiers, sons turn shields. They row not for glory, but for home. Across the water, the enemy looms. Toa Do, the legendary Mongol general whose campaigns had crushed kingdoms from the Himalayas to the South China Sea. His 30,000 horsemen and sailors once rolled like thunder through Asia. But here, on this crimson river, his shadow begins to flicker. The wind shifts. The tide pulls strange. From reeds and hidden coves, Vietnamese ships appear one after another, quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. The trap has closed. Drums pound like a single heart. Sat tat, the cry splits the sky, echoing off rain and flame. Fire leaps from boat to boat. The river itself seems to burn. In that instant, the empire that conquered half the known world meets a force it never understood. The will of a people who refuse to kneel. And as the smoke swallows the sun, a question rises through the chaos. How does a small nation break the hand of the world's greatest conqueror? The answer begins here, at Taiket, in the summer of 1285, where courage became destiny and a river rewrote history. The 13th century belonged to one empire. From the plains of Central Asia to the gates of Europe, the Mongol horse had thundered across the world like a living storm. They burned cities, erased dynasties, and rewrote maps. To most nations, resistance was suicide. But far to the south, where monsoon winds tangled with mountain mist, lay a kingdom the Mongols had not yet broken. Đại Việt. A narrow strip of land cradled between jungle and sea, small on a map, yet fierce in memory. Here, rice paddies shimmered like mirrors under the sun. Here, every river had two names, one for trade and one for war. The Mongols came once before, in 1258, and found not submission, but cunning. They had expected fortresses. Instead, they found emptiness. Villages abandoned, bridges burned, crops gone. And when hunger and fever took their horses, they withdrew northward, defeated not by armies, but by a people who understood patience better than conquest. For nearly 3 decades, the empire seethed, and in 1285, Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis and ruler of half the known world, ordered the southern frontier to burn again. This time, no retreat, no mercy. 2 vast armies moved like jaws closing around the Red River Delta. From the north rode Prince Tuatuan, Kublai's son, commanding legions that blackened the hills of Langsan. From the south marched Toa Do, a general whose name carried both glory and terror. Veteran of Champa, master of siege and fire. Their goal was not just conquest, it was annihilation. The erasure of a dynasty that had dared to defy the empire. In the capital, Thanglang, fear and resolve walked side by side. Courtiers whispered of omens, storms too early, rivers running high. But when the royal council gathered at Bingthon, one voice cut through the noise. Trần Hưng Đạo, general strategist, philosopher of war. He declared, "If they come, we fight." It was not loud, but it was final. His calm frightened men more than shouting could. The empire's strength was its size. Đại Việt strength was its soul. Trần Hưng Đạo knew the Mongols would come expecting surrender, open battle, or flight. He offered none of these. Instead, he ordered a land without food, without shelter, without light. Burn the granaries, hide the boats, leave them the ashes of their own arrogance. When the invaders crossed the border that spring, they found a ghost country. Villages empty, fields drowned, roads swallowed by bamboo. They marched for weeks and captured nothing but smoke. Still, the noose tightened. Toa Do's southern column swept north through Niaon and Tanghua, burning as it came. Tuatuan's northern force crossed mountains, pressing towards Thanglong. By mid-year, the jaws nearly touched. If they closed, the Tern dynasty would be crushed between them. The capital fell silent. Temples evacuated, markets emptied. Even the king, Ternyan Tung, young, contemplative, unyielding, left the city, withdrawing southward to preserve the nation's heart. Behind him, Fanglong burned. Villagers watched from distant hills, tears mixing with ash. They saw their homes die, but their country still breathed. For they believed something the Mongols could never understand. A kingdom is not its walls. It is the will of its people. And that will, quiet, patient, unbroken, was already gathering like thunder on the Red River. Spring faded into the heavy breath of June. The Red River swelled with mountain rain, brown and restless, carrying secrets beneath its surface. On its banks, the camps of David flickered with torchlight. Black silhouettes of warships rocked gently against the current, silent, waiting, alive. Every plank had been carved by local hands, every oar wrapped in cloth to hide its sound. This was not the army of a great empire. It was an army of memory, men who fought for the fields where they were born. Across the plain, Tuo Do's southern host advanced. 30,000 seasoned troops hardened by the fires of distant wars. Their banners glittered with foreign symbols. Their war drums carried arrogance in every beat. They had crushed kings before breakfast. They believed this would be no different. But they were marching into a country that no longer played by the rules of empire. In the war room, Trần Hưng Đạo bent over a map drawn on silk and smoke. His hand traced the river's slow curves like a pulse. He did not look at the enemy. He listened to them. The enemy is strong, but they do not understand our people, he said softly. Around him stood the men who would make his design real. Chern Quang Hai, calm and measured. Chern Yat Yuat, the scholar warrior. Pham Gu Lao, the soldier's soldier. And Chern Quoc Tuan, barely 16, the orange-crushing youth whose defiance had become a legend. Each carried not only a weapon, but a story of why this land mattered. Hung Dao's strategy was audacious. Strike south before the two Mongol armies could unite. Destroy Tuo Do's force on the river and the northern column would collapse. The place he chose for the ambush was a curve of the Red River called Taket. Shallow in parts, deep in others, dotted with islands and reeds like a secret written in code. Here, water could fight for him. He studied the tides, the wind, the width between banks. He read the river the way a general reads men, knowing where it bends, where it betrays, and when it can kill. Orders rippled through the night. Prepare the fireboats, hide them upstream beneath nets of leaves. Spread the word. The main army gathers at Tien Mac to face Tuatuan. Let Tuo Do believe it. It was a lie worth more than gold. Night after night, fleets of slender boats drifted silently down the river. Oars dipped, rose, vanished into moonlight. The soldiers spoke little, even breath felt sacred. Sometimes they heard frogs, sometimes wind through reeds, sometimes their own hearts. Some prayed, others whispered names of wives and children. All knew the same truth. Tomorrow was promised to no one. From the decks, villagers appeared like shadows, bringing rice, water, a handful of salt. They bowed, offered what little they had, and stepped back into darkness. The army's strength was not in numbers, but in faith. When Hung Dao moved among his men, they straightened without command. He carried no arrogance, only certainty. He told them, better to die with honor than to live in shame. The river listened. Far downstream, Tuo Do's army reached Hung Yen, their armor caked with dust and sweat. The heat pressed down like a curse. Their horses struggled in the marshland, supplies ran thin. The general's temper burned faster than his torches. Still, he pushed on, confident that Thuat Huan waited beyond the horizon, ready to join him in victory. He did not know that every mile forward was a mile deeper into the trap. By mid-June, the Vietnamese fleet had gathered. Over 100 warships armed with spears, arrows, and burning oil floated in position. On the command ship, the great banner of the Churn fluttered beside the flag of black letters, Sat That. Its fabric caught the wind like a heartbeat. That night, Hưng Đạo wrote to his king, "The time has come." The letter carried no fear, no doubt, only the weight of history about to turn. He stood at the prow, the torchlight painting lines of fatigue and faith across his face. The air smelled of wood, salt, and waiting. He looked toward the south, where Thuat Do was marching blindly into the river's mouth, and he whispered, as if to the water itself, "Tomorrow, Đại Việt will write again, in fire." The sky held its breath. Dawn. June 1285. The Red River glows like metal beneath a rising sun. Mist curls over the surface, pale, ghostly, silent. Then, far in the distance, a single drumbeat splits the air. Boom. Another. Then 100 more. The sound rolls through the valley like thunder over water. From the mist emerge the warships of Đại Việt, low, dark, ready. Hundreds of sails unfold like the wings of cranes. The morning light strikes their hulls, and the river itself seems to tremble. At the center stands the flagship of Trần Hưng Đạo. He raises his sword high. "For Đại Việt," he shouts. "Fight to the last breath." A roar answers him, thousands of voices, fierce, defiant, one. Oars plunge, water explodes, the fleet surges forward. From the south, Thuat Do arrives. His banners gleam with gold, his armor black with soot and pride. Before him stretches the Red River, calm, inviting, treacherous. He sees the enemy fleet lined across the water like ants before a storm. He laughs. Do they think a handful of boats can stop 30,000 men? He lifts his curved sword. "Advance!" The order ripples through the ranks. Mongol drums answer in thunder. War horns blare, deep and cruel. Rows of ships slide into the current, oars churning, horses screaming from the banks, archers ready to rain death from above. The empire has come to finish what it began. But the river has chosen its side. From behind islands of reeds, hidden craft drift into view, each one laden with barrels wrapped in cloth. Thuat Do frowns. He has seen many tricks. None of them matter when the empire strikes. He waves his hand. "Fire!" Arrows streak through the air, sharp, endless. They rain upon the approaching boats and vanish into smoke. A hiss, a spark, then a roar. The hidden vessels erupt in flame, fire spilling across the water like liquid sunlight. Barges of burning oil spin in the current, colliding with Mongol hulls. The first screams rise, the sky goes black with smoke. Wind catches the inferno, turning the river into a wall of fire. Masts crack, flags ignite. The calm Red River becomes a living beast, devouring all it touches. Trapped between flame and current, the Mongol fleet breaks into chaos. Commands vanish under the noise, drums drown in screams. And through that storm of fire, the Vietnamese fleet charges. The air fills with arrows, oars crash into oars, ships ram, splinter, overturn. Sailors leap from one burning deck to another, swords flashing. Each clash of steel is swallowed by the hiss of fire and water. The Red River no longer reflects the sky, it reflects war. On the lead ship, Trần Hưng Đạo watches with eyes that never blink. "Now!" he shouts, and the next wave surges in. Trần Hưng Đạo commands the infantry along the northern bank, cutting off the retreat. Trần Hưng Đạo drives his flank from the west, sealing the gap. Trần Hưng Đạo charges from the river's heart, a spear in each hand, his soldiers crying the ancient oath, Sat Tat. From every side, the noose tightens. The Mongols fight like cornered tigers. They push, they claw, they bleed. But they are strangers in this water. Their ships too heavy, their horses useless. Each yard of river becomes an ambush. Among the chaos rise Trần Hưng Đạo, the boy with the broken orange. His banner, red with smoke, torn in half, still flutters above the flames. He leaps onto a burning deck, swings his blade, and cuts through the enemy line. Around him, men fall, friend and foe, but the flag does not. It waves, blackened, stubborn, alive. "Hold the line!" he screams. His voice, high and young, slices through the noise like a trumpet. For a heartbeat, even the fire seems to pause. Then the river answers. Wado's confidence melts with his armor. Smoke blinds his eyes. His ship tilts, burning. He shouts for order, but the river has none to give. He turns to flee, but every route is closed. To the north, Trần Hưng Đạo arrows. To the west, Trần Hưng Đạo infantry. To the east, deep water and flame. To the south, death. He has fought from India to China and never known defeat. Now the world narrows to one river and one truth. Even empires bleed. He draws his sword one last time, roaring into the smoke. Die with me! His men charge, desperate, fearless, doom. Then, a cry, a crash, a wave of steel. The Vietnamese surge forward, overwhelming his guards. Trần Đạo disappears beneath the press of bodies in flame. When the smoke clears, his banner is gone. The Mongol army collapses. The invincible general is dead, not by one hero's hand, but by a nation's will. The battle rages for hours, then fades to echoes. By afternoon, the Red River runs thick and dark, carrying wreckage and ash. The air smells of smoke and iron. Thousands of corpses drift beneath the setting sun, Mongol, Vietnamese, all swallowed by the same current. On the shore, soldiers kneel, not in victory, but exhaustion. They look to their commander. Trần Hưng Đạo stands at the edge of the water, silent, his armor scorched, his hair silvered by ash. He watches as the body of Trần Đạo is brought before him, the face still, the eyes open to the sky. For a long moment, no one speaks. At last, the general says quietly, "A man who dies on the battlefield dies with honor." Then he turns to his soldiers, lifts his sword and shouts, "Đại Việt has triumphed!" The valley erupts in sound. Cheers, drums, tears. Men fall to their knees laughing and sobbing at once. Some embrace, others weep for those who will never return. Above them, the torn banner of Sat Tat flutters in the smoke, not pristine, but undefeated. The Red River, stained and sacred, carries its new story northward, past burned villages and empty fields, into legend. By sunset, the noise fades. The river glows again, not red with blood, but gold with light. And somewhere in that quiet, the meaning of victory begins to breathe. This was not the triumph of kings over kings. It was the triumph of the small over the vast, the patient over the proud, the human over the imperial. No empire could ever understand it because it was not written in fear. It was written in belonging. The Battle of Đại Việt was not the end of a war. It was the moment the world realized that no power, however great, can conquer a people who remember who they are. The smoke above Đại Việt lingered for days. The Red River, once a battlefield of flame, flowed quietly again, carrying ashes and memory toward the sea. On its banks, the warriors of Đại Việt stood barefoot in the mud, their armor broken, their bodies bruised, yet their eyes alive. They had done what the world believed impossible. They had stopped the empire that claimed to rule the earth. When word reached Thăng Long, the bells of the capital rang again for the first time in months. Fires were out, fields reopened. The king returned, not in procession, but in gratitude, walking among his people, touching their hands, thanking them for the nation they had saved. The villages rose from ruin. Farmers rebuilt their huts with the same hands that had held spears. Mothers called their children home from the hills. The The sound of hammers replaced the drums of war, and the banners that once read Sattat were folded, not forgotten, stored in temples beside incense and prayers. When the court gathered to honor their heroes, Trần Hưng Đạo asked for no treasure, no title. He bowed before his king and said, "My only wish is for our people to live in peace, and for no enemy to dare return." In those words, the war ended, not on the map, but in the heart. For the Mongols, like it was a defeat, for Đại Việt, it was a revelation. It proved that a nation's power is not measured by territory or armies, but by the spirit of those who refuse to surrender. And in that spirit, humble, patient, unbroken, the world glimpsed something eternal. Freedom, written not in ink or empire, but in courage. Centuries have passed, yet the river still whispers. Stand on its bank today and you can almost hear it. The oars, the drums, the voices that refuse to yield. Đại Việt is quiet now, but beneath the calm water flows the same current that carried a nation's courage. Because history never truly ends. It only asks new generations to listen. If you believe in stories of resilience, honor, and freedom born from the smallest shores, remember Đại Việt and journey with us as we uncover the battles where humanity itself refused to kneel. Subscribe and let history speak again.